Okay. Welcome, listeners, to our first live show of Season 3 of Inspire Change with Gunter. I am Mirandaspigener-sapon, executive producer of Inspire Change and the moderator of the show. Today, this very first special live show, we're discussing domestic violence and the areas of consent versus non-consent in sexual relationships, along with special guest Gunter's wife, Lorin Josephson, co-founder of the Making Good Men Great movement, as well as she's been a previous guest on the show during Gunter's Conversations with My Wife series. And then we have some very special guests, the filmmakers of the award-winning short film Strawberry Cake, Myrna Cabello and Ashley Weismantel. Myrna is an award-winning producer, director, writer, editor, actor, singer, songwriter, and visual artist based in New York City, originally from Austin, Texas. She is a first-generation Latina of Mexican descent and was named one of the top 100 influential Latinas by the Austin History Center. Her career began on stage and theater before transitioning to on camera after graduating with a degree of fine art from the University of Texas. She has hundreds of appearances in TV, film, commercials, and voice work, and recently as Guillermo's mom in What We Do in the Shadows, and the bilingual animated voice of Zobey for the Texas Department of Health, which had over 4 million views on YouTube. Her work in front of the camera led to the opportunity to produce and direct industrial documentaries for Texas Department of Health, as well as commercials. As a creator, she produced a multimedia musical including original songs for the famous Long Center in Austin, Texas, and music videos for her band. During quarantine, she created a variety show with her husband titled Myrna and the Bulldog in 3D, as well as the award-winning short Strawberry Cake. Ashley Weismantel is an actor, model, and voiceover artist and producer based in New York City, originally from Kanohi, Hawaii. Her spunk and quirkiness, coupled with passion for entertaining children, started her career on stage and landed her tours and children's educational shows across the country as well. Numerous commercials, films, and TV shows. One of her greatest loves is passing on the next generation her passion for literacy and the arts through storytelling, which she currently gets to do with a nonprofit in New York City. Her work on stage and in front of the camera led to writing, starring, and producing in her own children's theater show, and toured the Hawaiian Islands for 3 years in multiple winning short films and that had success in the festival circuits. Some of her recent bookings include a series called Couples Therapy, 3 national commercials, multiple voiceover spots, and the recurring animated voice of Helix in the series Galaxy Defenders. During the 2020 pandemic, she co-created the award-winning short film Strawberry Cake. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over everything to Gunter Swoboda, who will take over from here and start this discussion on domestic violence. The films, he'll be asking some questions, and we'll just have a really open, lively discussion. If you are on Clubhouse, listeners, you can go into the room. I'm not bringing people on stage yet, but I will have it open to listen, and feel free to log in, and then we'll take some questions at the end if there are any. So take it away, Gunter.
Great, thanks for that, Miranda. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming onto the show. The buyers are just amazing. I mean, I already know what Lorin does, so, we've had that before. But I really appreciate it. Very, very pleased to have you guys on the show for lots of different reasons. And if we get some time, I want to sort of dig a little bit deeper than to sort of talk about topics, the focus of the topics, because I want to see about how we can tie that together with the whole notion of inspiring change. And, the whole idea, I think, is, especially, my interest is in raising boys, is how can we get to boys, in essence, to prevent, the sort of thing that we're really going to be focusing on, which is, the content for Strawberry Cake and, the whole issue about gender relationships. So really, really excited about this little discussion. So let me, when I first saw Strawberry Cake, I sat back and it was like, wow, okay. We in Australia don't have anything like that whole thing about strawberry cake. How do you get women to safely, contact authorities to get out of a domestic violence situation? So the first question that I had is, what in your backgrounds, Myrna and Ashley, prompted that exploration and how to put it out there, and what was the aim of this? Either one of you, go for it. Rush me.
So what was our aim for this? Well, I have been touched by domestic violence, and I also, just by chance, as an actor, when I first started, I was cast as a woman who was abused. So I've dealt through that. I've seen it. There's a lot in the Hispanic community, and we wanted to do something that was meaningful during this time. Besides just as actors being able to work our muscle, because the shutdown, we weren't able to go to class anymore, to audition, or to do everything stopped. We all know that. And so Ashley and Marta and I went to class together, and so we kept in touch. We become great friends, and during that we were like, we need to keep working, we need to keep doing things. So what are we going to do? And so Ashley, I'll let you continue that, because it's a really cool story.
Yeah, so on social media there was kind of this trend starting around the beginning of the pandemic about safe words being used, and if you're ever in a situation and you need something, ask your friend for that strawberry cake recipe, and we'll know that you're reaching out for help. You're looking for someone to speak to. So it's something, I'm getting like chicken skin, because that's what we call it in Hawaii, when goosebumps. Is I reposted that because this is a topic very close to my heart, and remember, abuse comes in so many different forms, right? Physical, verbal, spiritual. There's so many forms, right? And so I think what this comes from a deeper place of my own personal situation that I went through, and so I've always advocated to be there for other women that are in those situations that don't have their voice to speak up. And so I reposted that right away on my social media account, and a woman reached out to me, and I just couldn't believe it, because I thought, oh my gosh, wow, no, this is really what some women need. They just need that little inlet to just be able to ask someone. And I think that's what, and then we started, as Marta, Myrna, and I, we all started discussing this, and I mean, it was just, talk about in such a despair time in the world, watching so much happening, the world shutting down, there were so many things happening behind closed doors that so many did not know. And that was, we were trying to bring light to what might be really happening behind that door, and you don't really know. And how can you know? We're all locked up in our houses, so
Also the topic of how, because we're all disconnected, even on a Zoom call when we think we know our friends and we think we know people, sometimes we don't catch those times when something's going on. We're so, it made us all get really self-involved, because we were, I don't know about you guys, but I all of a sudden, a lot of stuff started coming up for me about having to be locked down and everything. So it's like, even though we were trying to connect, sometimes we weren't. And we were missing people that needed help. And
a lot of times our partners were standing in the room next to us. I mean, think about that. Like, we could be having a Zoom call, checking in with our girlfriends or our friends, but someone could be standing outside the door. So we had to monitor what words we could really patient.
Yeah, well, that came out very, very clearly in the film. This thing about, how to communicate, in a sense, in the private private way, but in an open forum. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really, really hard. Lorin and I both, I'm not sure if you know, but we both have, a background in philosophy, but also, psychotherapy. We work in the mental health space. And one of the things that I was very conscious of very, very quickly from the time of the shutdown was that, firstly, there are going to be people who are going to be really, really vulnerable. That's going to be women and children in many respects. But the other issue was the increase of alcohol and drug use. And I mean, in my experience, and Lorin will back this up, I'm sure, is that frequently, alcohol is a precipitating factor or a strong component in situations of abuse. So we're not necessarily talking about physical abuse, but the whole gamut of it, because the alcohol and the drugs disinhibit people. So, it was interesting listening to the male voice, actually, and I'm going, yeah, he's been a dick, super dominating, controlling, and the sense of fear that you portrayed in that, I thought was really, really good. Really good.
Yeah, and I think that's where personal stories, and I love speaking out because I think so many don't, again, have that voice to speak out, or maybe they're still in that situation, they're not able to find their voice in that. But I would, like how you just said, find the fear, because so much of that fear is inward, and a lot of, women in particular can't express it until they're in a safe space and able to express that or to share.
Yeah. Well, from experience, I can also say that even in a safe place, women often don't express. They'll do a sort of like, they'll identify with the aggressor. Oh, well, he's not that bad, I really pushed him to it. And there's this mythology that comes out of that space where you get a narrative that's got nothing to do with the reality of the circumstance.
Of course. I mean, I just keep relating back to my situation, but no one in my world at that time knew anything that was going on. I always had the happy face. No, there wasn't that, you couldn't clearly see what was really going on. And so you're right, even in a safe space, sometimes you don't really, really know what's happening,
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think that's one of the major problems, is that people are not only pretending everything's okay, they want to believe that it is. They want to believe this is normal and that it's okay, and they don't want to have to look at it as it truly is. And so it's really seductive, that idea of not speaking, We have a process here when women come to an emergency department for anything, or into a mental health sort of treatment process, they are asked about domestic violence. There's a format about asking them whether they are afraid of their partners, whether they have been, or their ex-partners, or whether they have been hit or abused in any way. And it's amazing how many people will just automatically say no, and you sort of wonder how many are still hiding, even though they're given that opportunity to say something. Yeah.
And I think there might be a difference, and I mean, I haven't experienced that firsthand, but I do work with male professionals in this space about, if the person interviewing the woman is a male, is she going to actually really disclose or be more likely to hide it? Is it really necessary to have a female doing that interview? Now, some guys will go, well, that's sort of discriminating. And I'll go, well, I don't necessarily think, and this is where part of the title for the sort of movement comes from, is making good men great. I don't think we're in a space yet where there is that level of collaboration between genders, especially in sensitive areas like that. As men, we need to still work on that.
I was actually very interested in finding a male psychologist during that time, because I almost wanted to find, almost to figure out the male brain, right?